Hey Wranglers, how you doing? Today we're going to talk about the case of the Highgate Vampire, which is pretty interesting and used to scare the crap out of me until I did some research and then it scared me even more, and I'll explain why. But anyway, like and subscribe if you dig my content, and there we go. Anyway, let's get right into the story. The Highgate Cemetery is a place in London called Highgate, and you can see a picture of the gate right here. The green colored picture is the the doors to Highgate Cemetery. And around 1969 or 1970, there started to be some hype about people seeing a vampire in there, and not just a vampire, but other things that I'll talk about here in a second. But and so a little bit of a frenzy started to develop around this, and it was due to some folklore about the cemetery that had gotten out. Now, a little bit of the history of Highgate Cemetery was there's about 170,000 people buried there. Yeah, that's right, 170,000. I had to double check that. Between 150 and 170,000 people buried in Highgate Cemetery. Some of them are very famous, like Karl Marx, and he's buried there. George Michael from Wham is buried there. Gene Simmons is buried there, not from Kiss, but from the movie, believe it was Spartacus that she was in. She's buried there. And then there's a lot of mass graves and a lot of people, they dumped a lot of people there when there were disease outbreaks and things like that. So this place in London, this cemetery has a lot of bodies. And this folklore about the Highgate vampire started to crop up, and it started to get some hype. Okay, this is before the internet, obviously, but hype is nothing new for any of this stuff. Now, let me show you a little bit here. Here's some kids trying to get into the Highgate Cemetery. I guess they're going to go hunt this vampire down, and that brings us to our next section. As soon as this hype started, we had two vampire hunters that appeared. And of course, just like any hobby or anything, they're feuding. It's just like the Bigfoot community, they feud with each other. The alien community, UFO community feuds with each other about things. These two vampire hunters started feuding with each other. And they were Sean Manchester, who was a bishop, and then a guy named David Farrant, who was a Wiccan. And here they are. The bishop, you can tell he's in his vestments, and the other guy is David Farrant. Well, the two of them were the vampire hunters, and each of them was going to get the Highgate vampire and take him out and all that kind of crap. And they were started throwing shade at each other, like Farrant was accusing Sean Manchester of murder and stuff like that. That you can dig into that later. That would take all day to get into. But anyway, needless to say, it's your typical in-house in-house battle, just like anime fans or whoever, any of your fandoms or goths or whatever are gonna, bump heads, and this is what happened. But let's describe what people thought they were seeing in this cemetery. Well, some people claimed to see like a woman that was all white floating around. Some people claimed to see a giant spider in there, which would have been pretty damn cool. Ghosts wandering about. Now, two adolescent girls said they saw a dark figure with red eyes staring at them through the fence. And it just kind of, stood there and stared. They couldn't make it out other than the two slits for red eyes looking at them. And a couple of people reported that same sort of thing, and they believed that was the vampire himself, looking out at the, excuse me, how should I say it, looking out at the living, possible prey there. Now, the bishop, let me go back to the bishop here. Bishop Sean Manchester describes a vampire as not the sexy thing that I went into in my last video, because that's just nonsense. He says a vampire is the antithesis of life. It's disgusting and filthy. A disgusting and filthy parody of the blood of Christ, the redeeming blood of Christ. Death and misery. It brings death and misery, or even worse, it can corrupt the soul. That's what he said about a vampire. So, antithesis of life, it's disgusting and filthy parody of the redeeming blood of Jesus. Death and misery were all it brings, and it can corrupt the soul itself. So he was, hell bent on, no pun intended, getting rid of it. And then, this bishop, Mr. Bishop John Manchester, claimed to have him and his his colleagues claimed to have found the vampire. They found it in a mansion on the borders of Highgate Cemetery, an old, dilapidated neo-Gothic mansion, and they went down and they had to pull up the coffin, and they got the coffin up and they cremated the thing and supposedly took care of it that way. And Let me see if I got the picture. Here's a picture of the interior of Highgate Cemetery. This might be what they call Egyptian Row. It's supposed to kind of look like Egyptian tombs. The place is pretty massive. To say it's a big cemetery, it has to be to hold all those people. And they say that sometimes bodies are stacked on each other and all that kind of thing to get all the bodies to fit in there. Well, anyway, here is supposed photographs that our bishop took of the vampire dying. Okay. We have it. We have a face that's almost fully intact. We have one that's almost fully decayed. Then we have one that's about halfway through. I used to see these pictures and they scared the hell out of me when I was young. That one kind of looks like me when I had hair, but I'm no vampire, I can tell you that much. And so these are supposed photographs of the death of the Highgate vampire, and so taken by the bishop. Now, David Ferrant says they're fakes and they're, reverse photos of somebody in makeup and that kind of thing. So of course they're throwing shade back and forth at each other. And the bishop claims that this vampire, the Highgate vampire, was a king vampire, a basically practitioner of dark arts from Wallachia. He was in life a practitioner of the dark arts and he was from Wallachia, or where Dracula was from, and it was and once he died, and it was a vampire and maybe eliminated or something like that. He was successfully resurrected by local Satanists or modern Satanists that brought him back up out of the tomb, and he went on to torment the living. There were various people who claimed to have been seen or maybe be attacked by the vampire and all that, but I don't think there were any rash of deaths or anything during that time. And so anyway, the true story of the Highgate vampire, I used to see this picture and it would scare me, and I thought, well, maybe the damn thing is real. Maybe this is a real case of the vampire. But then I started reading about what's going on, and Bishop David wrote a book, and Bishop Sean, I'm going to get his name right here. Sean Manchester, the bishop, wrote a book. David Ferrant did his thing. Both of them were capitalizing on the legend of it. So once again, this boils down to the monster here isn't the vampire. It's people, trying to capitalize and be greedy and get what they can out of this legend, and out of the hype that's there, that's possible, and all that kind of thing. So you had the news, people getting interviewed on the news. You had the whole hubbub going around, and the whole, it was a circus. It was a media circus back then in 1970. So I believe that's the true story of the Highgate vampire. I don't believe there's actually a vampire or anything running around that cemetery. There could be. I do believe in ghosts and stuff like that. It's possible. But man, when you're looking for something, you're going to find it. And if you're out there looking for ghosts and goblins and giant spiders or whatever, I bet you're going to see something. You're out there looking for something that looks like a vampire, you're going to see that shadow that's going to convince you of what you're looking for. I believe that more strongly than I believe that there's a vampire running around. Both possibilities are true. This is a big universe. A lot of things can happen. But all things being equal, this was a hype event. People are going to see what they're going to see. People are going to hype it up. People are going to use it to get attention. So, hey, the legend of the Highgate vampire. I hope you enjoyed that. And I guess this is part of my vampire series. So you guys take care, and I will see you on the next roundup, Wranglers. Bye-bye.